Hey y'all, in this lesson, you're going to learn how to solve one-step equations with rational numbers. And remember, a rational number is just a formal name for fraction. By definition, a rational number is the quotient, that means division, of two integers. Remember, integers are negative, positive whole numbers, and zero. The second of which cannot be zero. So that means that the numerator, the top, can be zero, but the denominator, the bottom, cannot, because that makes our fraction undefined. So that's just the formal definition of a rational number. We recognize rational numbers as fractions or decimals. Basically, a rational number is a fraction, decimal, or any number that can be written in the form a over b. So any number that can be converted to a fraction is a rational number. Solving linear equations involves isolating the variable using inverse operations. The inverse of positive or addition is subtraction, which is actually a negative number, a negative integer. The inverse of multiplication is division. Division is actually the multiplication of the reciprocal. Reciprocal means you just flip it. So opposite of addition is subtraction, or positive and negative. The opposite of multiplication is division, or just flip the fraction. So let's look at this first example. X plus a half equals 3/4. It might help to set up a boundary where the equal sign is. And as a rule of thumb, if you want to move anything over the boundary, you have to use inverse operations. So if my goal is to isolate X, then that means I need to move positive 1/2. It is positive 1/2. So that means to move it, I'm going to have to do the inverse, negative 1/2, and put that on the other side to keep it balanced, because I can't just magically move something. I have to keep it balanced. It's like a scale, which creates our new equation. X 1/2 minus 1/2 is 0. They're inverses, so when you add inverses, it creates the identity 0 equals 3/4 minus 1/2. These do not have a common denominator. So in order to simplify this, I need to get a common denominator. This one's going to be pretty simple to do. I'm going to multiply by 2 on the top and the bottom to, again, keep it balanced. And now I have 3/4 minus 2/4, which is 1/4. And that's it. Not too bad. Number 2, why don't you pause it and try it? It's very similar to number 1. So go ahead and try it. Just try it and then come back. Hopefully you set your boundary here. And the inverse of negative 3/5 is positive 3/5. And that goes over here, which creates our new equation. X equals negative 7/8 plus 3/5. We need a common denominator. And this one's going to require a little bit more work for a common denominator. Between 8 and 5, the least common multiple would be 40, which means I'm going to have to multiply this one by 8 and this one by 5. And we end up with negative 35 over 40 plus 24 over 40. We do have integers here, so we're going to have to use our rules of integers. And we end up with negative, I'm going to have to switch that. Negative 11 over 40. And that's it. And number 3, there's 2 ways you can approach this problem, but I do want to use the idea of reciprocals. So in front of x, we have this fraction coefficient, this rational number coefficient, and I'm wanting to undo that. Now, this is -3/4 times x. So in order to undo it, I'm going to need to multiply by its inverse, which would be its reciprocal. And I'm going to write it out this way because in my mind, that's a little bit easier to see. The reciprocal of -3/4, all you have to do is flip the fraction, keep the sign, and now we have 12/12, which is 1. So remember, when you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. 12/12 is 1. 1 is the identity for multiplicative inverses. And that's just, it doesn't go away, but it would be a 1x, and we just write x. Oops, you know what? I need to multiply on both sides. Almost missed that. And to multiply a fraction by a whole number, you can put the whole number over 1 and then multiply straight across. And that would be your answer. This is an improper fraction. If it wants it as a mixed fraction, you're going to go ahead and divide that to convert it to a mixed fraction. That would be, let's see, it goes 2 times with 2 left over. And that's it. The other way that you can do this, I do want to show you both ways, is you can go a step at a time. You can multiply by -4 and then divide by 3, and you get that -8/3. So there's 2 ways to do that. I like the reciprocal. It's nice and clean. One step. Last one. We have -6 times x equals 2/5. So I'm going to rewrite it out. -6 would be -6/1. So if I were to multiply by its reciprocal, that would be -1/6. We just flip the fraction on both sides. Don't forget that. And then on the left side, we end up with +6/6, which is 1, the identity for multiplication. And then on the right side, we have -2/30, which reduces to -1/15. And that is all. Another way you can do this one, which it might be a little bit more popular, I used reciprocals because I wanted to follow the same pattern for this lesson. But another way you might see this, let me do a little line here, is we have -6 times x. And so you might see divide by -6. Since it's multiplied, we do the opposite, which is divide. And the reason why I didn't do that is because sometimes this looks kind of like, oh, what is that? You know, so it's kind of messy, but it does work that way. These divide to 1. And then when you divide by a fraction, you flip the second and multiply. Anyway, it's a little bit more to remember that way, but if you want to do it that way, that's totally fine. So that's all I have for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'd be happy to help. See you in the next one.